I request Energy to give his initial observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijayji. Thank you, Vedji, Neetaji, and fellow panelists and participants in this very important webinar. My experience in this regard remains my tenures, limited to my tenures as sub-divisional magistrate and the deputy commissioner or district magistrate. That is about 4 years. However, so I would like to make some remarks which may be relevant in this regard. So why this issue is important? Let me bring two important perspectives. One is a perspective from one Peruvian economist. Many of the practitioners in the development arena may be aware of that gentleman. His name is Hernando de Soto. He's probably going to also contest as the president in 2021 elections. Very important economist. So he makes this remark about the importance of land governance in the market economies. He makes this statement: without an integrated formal property system, a modern market economy is inconceivable. So this is one perspective. So in order for the market economy to be successful, you need to have a very important and very well-functioning land governance and land management system. The other vantage point is from these sustainable development goals, which the UN adopted. If you see the sustainable development goal number 1, which is the no poverty, and it mentions equal right to economic resources, ownership and control over land and other natural resources. Then if you go over to the sustainable development goal number 2, which is relating to zero hunger, and it also mentions as goal number 2.3, doubling the production of the small scale food producers, including through secure and equal access to land and other productive resources. Similar goals are there in respect of say SDG number 5 or SDG number 11, relating to gender equality and sustainable cities and communities respectively. So both this perspective, and there are many other perspectives. For example, one of the issues that I felt because our defective registration system, land registration system that were there, at least in Jharkhand, it gave rise to a lot of crimes and murders. So anybody got registered, transferred land to anybody, and since the person was not the owner, so there were disputes, and in Jharkhand, at least many murders were associated with defect people involved in these disputes. In fact, if you statistics will find that 55% of the cases in the civil courts are relating to land disputes. This is not a figure which is found elsewhere over the world. So it's very important for all of us to be very deeply rooted and very deeply engaged with the issue of land resources and land governance if we are the development practitioner, because mere development practice without links to the land governance wouldn't be actually successful in a country like India, where the pressure on the land resources is very small. I would like to bring to your notice issue which came out in the 70th round of the National Sample Survey. And it mentioned that average monthly income of a farmer is about 6,426 rupees, whereas the average monthly expenditure is about 6,223. So net surplus is only about 203 for an average farmer. So average, as you are aware, is across the class. So for the small and marginal farmer and the landless tenanted farmer, you can very well understand that the person is going to be steeped in poverty, and because of his position in the market, he's also not getting the institutional credit which the national rural livelihood program has addressed to some extent, but there is a lot of ground to cover. It also kind of mentioned farmers below 1 hectare of land are unable to balance their budget. Then if you go through the doubling farmers income report by Ashok Dalwai, if you go through the chapter book number 11, they have gone into this debate whether with the small holdings, does the efficiency of farming increase? And they have kind of observed that although this relation may be there, but it breaks down at some point in time. So both Ramesh Chand and then there are two authors, Sarthak Gora and Srijit Misra, both have been quoted in that report, and they kind of make this point that this relationship breaks at landholding size of about 1 hectare, because these people purchase inputs from the market, their access to markets for sale of their produce is lower, their access to the institutional credit, etc., is lower. So this issue of land holding below a certain size being at the disadvantage to the communities is important and needs to be properly understood in order to devise development programs. Sunil, who is Secretary Panchayati Raj, was discussing with me the issue that has come up with the Swamitva scheme. Many of you would be aware that Swamitva scheme deals with survey and mapping and titling of the homestead land of the people. Generally, the agricultural lands have been surveyed across the country, barring some patches. However, if you take up the homestead land, it's largely unsettled because the people who were interested in land and were interested in collecting rent, and the rent only came from the agriculture holding. So the homestead land was very not surveyed, or surveyed only in patches and parts. So that survey has now thrown up very interesting results and kind of difficult results as well. Whereas when he found on a compilation of results of one village, he found that there are many holdings which are less than 40 square meter. And we can very well understand how much size is 40 square meter. The houses that are being proposed under the Prime Minister Awas Yojana are 25 square meter in size to 150 square feet. And if you take land around that, so you don't have place for, say, locating a toilet, you don't have place for allowing good sunlight. And if you want to bestow that person with some livelihood assets like, say, poultry shed or cattle shed, there is simply no land available for those households. So the issue of livelihoods is intricately linked, because of the availability of land, there are livelihoods which are simply not possible for some category of people. And if you want to make those livelihoods possible, then you'll have to do something else in order to get land. So one of the perspectives which comes with that is how do you do that? And consolidation comes as a one of the possible routes through which this land could be, some land could be brought in. As was mentioned by Mr. Vijay, that there are states where the land holdings are rather compact in nature, but there are many states, particularly in the eastern parts. And now I'm told that the areas which were consolidated earlier, say in 50s, 60s, etc., now they have also the land holdings are extremely fragmented, and therefore there's also a need for taking up the issue of consolidation. I take this opportunity to also kind of mention some issue, thing about oral tenants. As you are aware that about 30% of the farmers come from the tenant category, and they take land from the owners on lease and then they cultivate. Because the issue of ownership and the tenancy are not clearly separated, therefore the land, the tenure of the tenancies are very small, probably less than a year in terms of time. So therefore, there is hardly any incentive for that tenant farmer to make any investment into that land. He is unable to get institutional credit. He is unable to get benefits of these schemes, which will flow to the owner who is there as a recorded tenant. And also, he or she is unable to get the benefit of the uh, uh, reliefs which are announced at the times of disasters. So one of the important issues, if we are talking about the land governance, and not going into great detail about other things, there are many issues connected with the land governance, but the issue of how do we make sure that the oral tenants are brought into public domain, they are recorded, and their rights are protected without the owners feeling insecure about their own land and their control over land, is an issue which we need to address. I am not making this claim that people have not done work. In fact, if this number was much lower earlier, now this has, as per some surveys, some assessment, it has reached about 1 in 8 such farms. But there is a very large number which remains outside the record formal kind of tenancies. The other issue related to this is also the fact that the attempts like those in Andhra Pradesh, which in 2011 passed a law for recording the informal tenants, unfortunately failed to do that because of the insecurity of the owners of the land to get their tenants registered. And since they are weak and our land revenue system in these states largely works in large farmers, owners. Therefore, they were unable to register. So one of the learnings all across the world, which also equally applies to the India, is that the content of the reform is as important as the process through which the reforms are carried out, and the political economy of the reforms should be very well understood and factored into the implementation of the reform, and the way the reforms are talked about, peddled out, and people who are responsible for implementation are trained, oriented, and incentivized to implement them. So these are important learnings which we need to take note of. The article that I had written was concerned with land consolidation, and the point that I wanted to make was that because of the fragmentation of holdings into multiple plots, it's very difficult for that person to make investment. It is neither he can make investments in terms of assets attached to land, say wells or boundary walls or plantation, etc. But also the fact that because you have so much fragmentation, therefore you waste a lot of land in terms of the the boundaries of those land, and then litigation that arises out of it, and then you spend time in going from one plot to another plot. The issue of mechanization suffers, so the efficiency of and the productivity suffers. So there is a good case for bringing land consolidation on the agenda, although it's a difficult task and there are many other routes. Say, for example, the land leasing law, which has come, then land poolings could also be the case. So there are many other routes. However, I thought the land consolidation agenda should not be left because it's a difficult agenda. There are issues which are difficult, like farming reforms, uh, which are currently the subject matter of litigation and agitation. These are difficult reforms, but for a nation to prosper and to put itself on a long-term path of growth, these reforms have to be written and addressed. And therefore, similar is the case of land consolidation. In fact, in my assessment, it will free up and make possible investment not only in the farming sector, but also in the non-farm sector. Because there might be people who have consolidated land holdings available at one place, and those could be put to non-agriculture and industrial use. In fact, I would also like to mention that Dr. Ramesh Chand, who is a member of the Niti Aayog, makes this point that in order to make sure that the small farmers and marginal farmers are able to take advantage of the opportunities which are currently arising in cities. And we have seen the recent reverse migration and the difficulties with which they were visited during this corona crisis, that the jobs are made available in the rural areas, and so that in addition to the farming work that they do, they are also able to take advantage of the non-farming ways related opportunities that arise in their areas, and without the need for uprooting themselves, going out to urban slums and being in a very vulnerable position, both from the point of view of the kind of quality of life that they lead, but also in terms of extreme insecurity and vulnerability that they face in the urban areas. So from multiple perspectives, the issue of land consolidation is one of the important agendas and reform agendas, and this we should bite. The last point that I would like to make is that it's very important for all the development practitioners to continually with the issue of land governance, titling, ownership, and other issues, because until unless our development practice is based on the realities of the land structure on the ground, most of the jobs that come from the farming or farm related sectors wouldn't be materializing, and to make them possible and to ensure that the developmental activities take place on a solid footing of fact and reality on the ground, we have to address the issues. I would end my the introductory part of the address here, and would be available to take any questions that may be asked by the participants and others. Thank you.
Thank you, Sinaji, for those very interesting, in fact, quite amazing. I would say that a person like you sitting where we are sitting in government, you are talking about such issues which were considered, which are still considered hugely radical. You have spoken about homestays. I mean, if you actually took up that data on landlessness in India, the percentages quoted, often quoted by NSS report, is around 8%, 10% or something. But if you add the people who are near landless, who only have homestays, that percentage could go up to 25% or even up to 35% or something. That's what studies from JNU, Vikas Travel, etc. have shown. So it's a very critical issue that you have highlighted. And even more important is the issue of the uh, more important is the issue of tenancy that which you have highlighted. In fact, we are thinking of today, we are discussing to have a separate seminar probably only on issues related to tenancy. The topic is so vast. And many states have made tenancy illegal, like Madhya Pradesh also, for example, I think. And a lot of oral tenancies therefore prevail. And people are who are tenants are highly vulnerable and they have no place to go. But that is a very, very critical issue which you have highlighted. And you are also talking about the political economy of land structure, which is very, very radical agenda. So thanks for all those important things. I understand your concern about land consolidation. You are actually not only talking about land consolidation, you're talking about land reform as a whole agenda, how one should look at it and try to see it to what extent it is possible, even though it's considered politically infeasible now, totally impractical now. You are actually asking us to bite the bullet and actually go into the possibility of looking at it. Thank you for those very valuable observations. And we'll not have much time to discuss about issues like tenancy in this thing. We'll be focusing more on land governance and land consolidation kind of issues. But between in RCRC itself, we could come up with a separate topic for a webinar itself on larger issues related to tenancy and agrarian structure, and now it has changed and all that, and bring caste kind of elements also into it. Land ownership is very closely tied to caste relationship also. So those things can be taken up for a future thing. Thank you for your very valuable observations.